Sometimes we hear with people who are new to Buddhist practice or new to practice of meditation, and that's the goals of what we're doing. Is we're aiming at this bhavana, this development of mind. That's sometimes how we call it, although bhavana, as Ajahn Cunda was talking about, can be in many directions, that sort of development. But in terms of meditation, I'm guessing that most people in this room are quite interested in developing it. And so often that means that it's like sila is secondary. And so that sense of morality or looking at what is important for us to think about in terms of really whether we're expressing any kind of harmful activity in the world. And I was thinking about speech a little bit, just how easy it is to take for granted something like speech, because most of us engage with it in one way or another. There's really no avoiding of using speech. Interestingly enough, when one of the monks was claimed to make a determination to be silent during what's called the rains retreat, or the time when it's a rainy season, and then the monks aren't supposed to move around as often, so they're not trampling the crops. The Buddha forbade that monk. He made it an offense, actually, to make the determination not to speak, which of course is very practical on his part. When you determine something like that, then you create a situation where you're probably going to just burden other people. There's going to be some point you have to talk to somebody, have to say something. So as human beings, we use speech, and of course some of us talk more than others, and some of us are more restrained than others. But the true miracle around speech is that any of us really have any understanding at all about what the other person is saying. And when you think about it, it's like each of us lives in our own world, and then we're trying to talk to each other about that own world, and the other person is interpreting what is said based on their own very unique perceptions. Even colors can be spoken about, and we might be talking about different shades of colors. So the whole idea of thinking that we're truly understood by another human being is almost impossible. Even in some of the ideas of thinking that some of the supernatural powers that are said to be had by people who have been perfecting the Dhamma or understanding the Dhamma to a very high degree, is that they can understand the thoughts of others, but they'd still be interpreting those thoughts of others based on their own perceptions, their own minds. And so when we think about it, it is truly a miracle that another human being can understand another. But it's something I think that's easily taken for granted. And then when you add the fact that not all of us are so skilled in speaking, in kind of conveying, the heart of our own experience to another person, then that miracle becomes even more miraculous. How do we actually communicate with each other so that it's effective and the other person truly understands what we're saying? So this morning we heard the calendar read out, and I would suggest that every single person receive that information just slightly differently. Those who know Ajahn Jayasara, who've never met him, who don't even know what that's even pertaining to, visiting monk. So we're constantly having to deal with this notion of understanding through speech. Like Tanrakito read out tasks that we had done. We might just be imagining what those things are that we're going to be doing. And then, of course, through that own imagining, we create worlds around that, and then we project what is going to happen. And one thing that is 100% absolutely sure is that you're completely wrong about your projection. How could you be right? How could it be possibly true that what you imagine you're going to be doing is exactly what you're going to be doing. It's never the case. And this is because of anicca, this is because of impermanence and not really being sure of what our future actually is, how it unfolds. So all of this comes through speech and how we not only listen to things or communicate with others, but how we speak to ourselves in our own minds. And so the Buddha really gives a particular amount of weight to right speech, to really trying to be careful. And the speech he's talking about is really this outward speech, the vocalization. And yet, even though he's not speaking about right speech when he's talking about our thoughts, well, there's a whole lot of input that he gives around how we think as well. So it's a whole realm that we have as human beings that we really work with our words, how we think about things. This really colors our entire possibility of whether we have the capacity to be peaceful or not. Just the thoughts that one has had in the last, since waking, the last few hours might be completely in a direction that is leading us to unwholesome tendencies. We might be speaking to ourselves and our minds in ways that don't lend us towards moving into the wholesome. And so this is something that's extremely important for us, how we recognize speech, how we think about it, what we're doing to ourselves with it. And yet speech can lead to all kinds of wholesome tendencies, an interest in dana, generosity, kindness to another person. And so the more that we really guard our speech and are careful with it, then the more it can lead us towards peace and harmony and that very thing that we're interested in. We might be interested in cultivating the mind, as I started this reflection, just saying that most people are interested in cultivating meditation, learning how to be a more skilled meditator, but without kind of regard for this very important aspect, how we speak to ourselves, how we speak to others, then this skill really can't be realized. There's something that we won't be able to surmount in our own meditation if we're not really paying attention to speech. And so, as many of you know, this is also an encouragement towards myself. So this reflection is often something that we're thinking about, but just seeing in my own mind, like how, in certain ways, when I speak to others and I'm not guarding that well, then I can see that very sabotaging that occurs, that self-sabotaging. It's just sort of not really thinking of how I speak as that important. Something we put out into our environment, and then it just really affects others, and then ends up not just affecting others, but affecting ourselves. And so if we can reflect on that throughout the day, reflect on how we can create a wholesome sense of how we're speaking to ourselves, and then what those vocalizations occur, how those occur, how we can really restrain ourselves, but also encourage that wholesomeness in how we speak and in how others are hearing us.